Hello, you are listening to Brute McVein's Wrestling Review. I am Brute McVein, and I'm here with my co-host DJ Convoy to go over Inside Wrestling Digest, spring of 1999. DJ, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Brute, and it's great to talk to you again, and it's great to go back to the well on this one, because I think there's a whole heck of a lot of stuff left over for us to take a look at on this particular digest.
We could probably stretch this out for a long time, but I say we get the highlights and we get out of this one because, we just had our pre-production meeting where we talked about nothing we were actually going to talk about on the show. We just kind of goofed off for a while. But I really want to hit these memories of the 1990s again.
Yeah.
I think that was really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I really enjoyed hearing their made-up they're definitely true memories of the 90s and so forth. I'm still stuck on the one about the class of Hulk Hogan. I thought about that all week. It's just an amazing statement.
Yes, this podcast has already changed your life, and if you're unfamiliar with it, what we do is we go through old wrestling magazines, not exclusively, but that's going to be the majority of what we do. And wrestling magazines were such a big part of the business when we were growing up. Also, we didn't have the internet, so this is kind of a walk down memory lane for us, and something we both really enjoy. You are a way bigger collector. I thought I had a problem at one point with my trash bag of magazines I had. You have everything, man.
I might have a problem. Yeah, we definitely have a lot of magazines here at Casa de Convoy. Frankly, over the past few years, I've just kind of fallen off of collecting that sort of thing, just because you run out of room, you run out of money, you run out of time. But we definitely have. We kind of hyper focused on it for a few years, and we definitely built up a pretty big collection, I would say.
Yeah, I know how that goes, man. Today in my living room, I had, 6 PCs, and I started thinking, like, you might have a problem. Like, I've just got all these PCs lined up that I can just plug them in. I don't. For different purposes and stuff like that.
Sure.
Like one's audio editing, one's video editing, gaming, and stuff like that. And so, I had that epiphany today of you need to stop collecting computers.
I have. All we do is collect stuff. Both me and the missus. So I have probably something along the lines of 15, maybe more game consoles. And it's not like she disapproves. She likes this stuff too. So ancient game consoles in one room, modern ones in one room, in between ones in one room, games for all of the above. 40 years worth of Transformers entirely dotting the wall in one room, in this room, in fact. Countless comic books, countless magazines, countless wrestling magazines, countless books, countless DVDs, countless toys. We're both horrible. This place, our apartment is basically almost a museum, you could say. I've had friends mockingly call it the museum before, but they're not far off.
Yeah. Well, our listeners will reap the benefit of your magazine hoarding. But today, let's just dive back in. We're going to finish Inside Wrestling Digest, spring of 1999. And I'm just perusing through it. How about we get started with DDP's Big Bang Theories?
Absolutely.
Loose on Life, Love, and the Ultimate Buzz.
Love me some DDP.
I wonder what the Ultimate Buzz is. I'm going to say cocaine.
He was pretty jacked a few times, I would say. So, yeah, possibly.
All right, page 67. Let's move down to, we'll start with DDP's thoughts on love. He says, "That's easy, brother, Kimberly. Kimberly, Kimberly, Kimberly. It took me a long time to find someone as special as she is, and I'm going to hang on to her forever." I think that about says it all. That does say it all. I think that's a pretty easy theory to arrive at when Kimberly just shows up.
That was a fairly easy answer for him. And you know what? I want to say fair play to DDP. He and Kimberly are no longer together, I believe. But I believe, and I don't know, all the ins and outs, the day-to-day. I believe they've still remained friends. So if they were together for such a long period, broke up, and still remain friends, I think that's pretty laudable. So, hey, good on DDP.
When did they get together? Because, she was the booty babe for a while with the Bootyman.
I want to say that she predates him being in WCW, but I could be mistaken about that. I believe he brought her in because he was like some kind of impresario and ran at least one strip club, if not several, in Florida, I believe. So all the boys would go there, get the brother discount, I suppose. And I don't know if she was a young lady he met at one of these establishments. I don't really quite know that part of the story. But I think their relationship predates his wrestling for WCW, I believe.
Okay, and I don't want to go off on too much of a tangent, but what was the deal with the Bootyman? Was he a man who just had a great booty and he loved other booties? Like all things booty?
I would guess that if you listen to his theme song, it was just all about booty. Booty, 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 shake, shake, shake. So, and then he would have, Brutus Barber has this as well. He would have the chaps and he would have the ass cut out of them, not unlike, say, Prince. And in WCW, they were kind of a bit, I don't know, they might have thought that was too risque, so he would have like another layer of tights on underneath there, obviously. So he would come out basically as Brutus Beefcake, really no difference between him and the Bootyman, except you had this amazing theme song talking about booty, 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 and then the Booty Babe would come out. She was essentially his cheerleader, and then she would rate everything he did. And for whatever reason, although you and I have both seen a trillion Brutus Beefcake matches, everything he did was a 10 to her. So I guess she was very easily impressed. So she would hold up a sign at ringside saying 10. And you could a more stalwart cheerleader you could never find.
I'm going to say that she just has perception issues because she's a 10. She married DDP, who's not like he's a great guy and all, but aesthetically, like he's kind of, not DDP, the best guy. But
DDP might have been batting out of his league slightly with Kim, I would think.
It worked. I'm kind of mad we got robbed of an all-time tag team of Mr. Ass and the Bootyman.
I think that'd have been too much ass for the average viewer to handle, but the backstage vignettes would have been incredible.
What a terrible team that would have been.
And of course, if that happened in WWF, then they would, a wacky thing would happen, and Rikishi would walk in. And, he's got a big ass.
Zooming and dancing.
And it just writes itself.
Yep. Okay. Back off of that tangent. On live, DDP says, I don't mean to sound corny, but you got to turn all the negatives into positives and go from there. You got to have tenacity if you want to succeed, and that goes for anything in life. I didn't get to where I am today by sulking every time life gave me a kick in the rear. You got to bust your butt, he could have said booty, to get what you want out of life.
You read last week, there was an article that Chris Jericho wrote, and it was very obvious that Chris Jericho actually wrote it himself. Having heard just 2 entries in this so far, I'm almost positive DDP has definitely written this himself, because these are definitely, he doesn't want to sound corny, but these are the different kind of corny platitudes that DDP would espouse to anyone who would listen. So I really feel like if this is not DDP himself, someone's doing an awfully good job of mimicking his voice.
No, I can definitely see this. I can almost hear it from like a yoga pose, him just telling me this, And it has held true. I mean, he's like the ultimate hustler, man. And it's like nothing really gets him down. And you'd have to be that way to deal with, people like Scott Hall and like rehab these people, because if you let something get you down, dealing with Jake Roberts and Scott Hall at the same time, man, you better have some strength in you.
If you think about the trajectory of DDP, it's pretty amazing. He was on the outside of the wrestling business, friends to wrestlers, like we were just talking about. He's an impresario of various strip clubs and so forth, kind of on the periphery of the business. Reinvents himself as a manager in the AWA to, varying degrees. I really like Bad Company, but he as a manager is kind of whatever. Does the thing in WrestleMania, drives the pink Cadillac, because literally he had a pink Cadillac and knew a couple people. Decides he wants to reinvent himself again, become a wrestler. Everyone tells him no. He becomes a wrestler. He's kind of so-so. Suddenly, he gets a hot finish. he becomes a fan favorite, and not in a fan favorite rule breakers sense, but in an actual people really love this guy sense. Was riding really high in WCW for a good 3 or 4 years. Went to WWF with, let's just say, less good results, I suppose. And then reinvented himself as a fitness guru. And it's not like something where it's like, oh, this guy, is some kind of like Tony Robbins style scam or whatever. No, this guy is really changing lives. He really is helping the Scott Halls and the Jake Roberts of the world. It's amazing that this guy is incredible, and that he's had all these completely different career paths in one life. He's lived a lot of life in his time.
He might be the ultimate overachiever.
Absolutely.
All right. Speaking of ultimate, the ultimate buzz for me is to see all the people who tell me that I've helped make their life just a little better. I meet a lot of people on the road, and I try to give as much time to my fans as possible. I've had people who are crippled, people who are on crutches and in hospitals. I've had those people tell me that my work ethic helps them in their own lives. They see me take a beating in the ring, come right back and try again. And when they say I'm an inspiration to them, well, that's the kind of thing that blows me away. And that's what it's all about. So yeah, that kind of reiterates that. This is printed from interview he did in 1998. So
it certainly sounds authentic to me. It had no mention of cocaine though, so I'm a little bit disappointed.
Just wait. We'll get to that. On Hollywood Hogan, what can I say? I hate the sucker. It makes me sick when I hear him coming out calling himself the almighty Hogan. Wrestling was here long before Hogan, and it will be here long after Hogan. He just gets under my skin. Well, not alone on that one.
I feel like fairly reasonable. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, the WCW WWF war. It's great for wrestling, and it's great for the fans. This has a parallel to today. It's kind of like my career, we win some and they win some, but you better not count anybody out. Whenever there's conflict, people pay attention, just like with the NWO, and I think that everybody wins in the long run.
Except for WCW, which lost.
Yeah.
And DDP himself, who went to WWF and lost greatly there as well.
Yeah, I have no memory of his WWF run. I think I dipped kind of once WCW went down the tubes. I was on my way out also.
Yeah, I stopped watching. My wife and my roommate kind of watched here and there, and we really stopped watching basically until TNA was on Fox Sports Net. So from about 2002 to 2004, I didn't watch a ton. I've gone back since. I certainly watched like all the, SmackDown 6 era SmackDowns and so forth. The missus, when she's sick or, busy at work, loves just throwing on like random 2000 or 2001 Raws just because it's like good background noise and it's stupid and you don't have to pay attention. So I've certainly watched it all in that sense. But yeah, no, we stopped once WCW went down for years.
Someone has put compilations of like WWF 1995, WCW 1996, like per month. And they've just distilled it down to like Saturday nights. And so it's just like a 4-hour video of everything that aired for WCW, like on that month in that year on YouTube. And they're awesome videos just for background because like you'll walk by and you'll be like, what kind of match was this? And like, I saw DDP, the Diamond Stud, and Vinny Vegas all coming together on one of those old things. And it was like
the Vegas connection.
Three nothings on Saturday night. All became world champions, and they're together.
Diamond Stud is amazing because it's just Scott Hall, obviously, but he's got suspenders, and then like he takes them off, and then he's just Scott Hall. He does all the Razor Ramon mannerisms. He does the handshake. He throws a toothpick sometimes, not always, but sometimes. It's astounding that you see these guys, and it's just like they're kind of just prototype, what they will become in the Fed later on. It's amazing. But yeah, the Vegas connection is quite an interesting team. And there's nothing worse than Kevin Nash and his kind of, hey, I'm a kind of bookie guy voice is just brutal. So bad.
That voice, man, that voice just kills me.
Oh, yeah.
On Life on the Road, he says, It's rough. It's much more grueling than most people would think. I just came back from Utah, where I met up with my buddy Carl Malone for his birthday, and I'm about to head out to LA today. I'm always on the road, and it can really wear your body down. You never get time to rest those deep muscle bruises and aches and pains because you're always trying to catch the next flight. Seems like he needs some sort of yoga thing.
Also, he may have strained his back from dropping that name just a second ago.
That's an excellent point. Yeah, he worked that in real nicely. I was just with my buddy, Carl Malone, the mailman. Okay, let's see here. On living with pain. I don't know any other way to live. I don't think anyone takes or gives out more of a beating in the business than I do. If you don't believe me, ask Hogan. Even he takes his game up another level when he's in the ring with me. I'm still hurting from those matches with Chris Benoit, too. Well...
I guess he was
neither of us
constant.
Are going to go there.
Well, yeah. But I was going to say that as far as constant pain goes, I guess I would explain his constant rib tape that he adopts after his feud with Macho Man. The rib tape seems to become a part of his costume after a time.
That's true. His ribs were taped for years.
Yes. Those floating rib injuries never heal, I suppose.
That's
until you find yoga, of course.
Once you lose your hair in like a hair versus hair match, it doesn't grow back either. Just like those ribs. Once they're injured in wrestling, they're always injured. Let's go one last part here. It says on the media. He says, too sensationalized. They tend to make the news rather than just report it. As far as some of those rag sheets that were quote unquote report on wrestling. All those things do is try to pass off opinions as facts. Like some writer who's never laced up my boots is going to try to critique my matches. I don't think so. But you guys are all right, I guess. Bang!
See, stuff never changes. Everyone gets upset when someone goes in today about the rag sheets, the dirt sheets. Nothing ever changes. Time is indeed a flat circle.
Here we are. All right. That wraps up DDP's Big Bang Theory.
I promise you that was really DDP. It really seemed like it was.
I think so.
Absolutely.
All right. I think we've got time for one more, and then I want to hit these memories of the 90s. So I'm going to let you pick which one we do here. We've got Val Venus persona. It's all up front. We've got Mark Marrow's Tell of the Tape comparing Sable and Jackie on the 10-point must system.
Oh, boy.
And then we also have No Evil. Can today's fans accept the Warrior's Creed? It's a different time, a different audience.
We have to go in on Ultimate Warrior.
Okay. I'll say, here we go. Okay.
This may be a mistake, listeners. I apologize if it is in advance.
You're going to make me do this. Okay, this one's written by Steve Anderson, reprinted from Pro Wrestling Illustrated, January 1999. Trends in professional wrestling change at a blinding rate. What once was fashionable becomes outdated. Fans always want the latest and greatest, not the old and antiquated. Look at the trends that have emerged over the past 2 years. Rule breaking has become chic. Defiant and indignant attitudes are cool. 2 years is a long time in pro wrestling, and 2 years made for a long sabbatical for the Warrior. He disappeared from the WWF radar in the summer of 1996. While he was on the sidelines, though, pro wrestling progressed mightily. The sport is reaching a level of popularity unmatched, even during the mid-'80s. Wrestling has changed. Fans have changed. The line between good and evil no longer exists. In fact, evil is tolerated and often outright cheered. And they're right on. There was a weird phase where, like, the bad guys were the cool guys now and would do whatever they could to be the cool guys, and the bumbling heel was, like, out.
Absolutely. Well, look at Stone Cold Steve Austin. He wasn't really a babyface, even though we treated him like one. He wasn't particularly a good guy.
Yeah. And, I mean, in hindsight, you can look at the damage that kind of did for a long time.
We're still recovering from what the NWO did to the business by being cool heels. I mean, it still permeates today. We still have traces of it in the Elite and the Bullet Club. I mean, it's still there.
I will give Kenny Omega, like, he's the ultimate bumbling idiot. Like, he's always shocked.
Yeah.
Anytime there's an announcement, he's like, he could never just comprehend that would ever be announced. He's surprised. He doesn't want to fight,
He's amazing. He's such an egoless performer. He's so happy to make a buffoon of himself.
Yes.
For our pleasure. And that's something the NWO completely lacked. Scott Hall and Kevin Nash particularly, they can never, and Scott Hall would certainly do jobs and so forth, but it was very rare where they would end up with pie on their face. And, that permeates down to today for sure.
Yeah, it would be like once every 3 months, and you better believe they're getting the heat back the next week.
Undoubtedly.
And like Scott Hall, yeah, he was less selfish, but like he would make sure there was something in it for him. Like, okay, Austin, I'll sell your stunner like I'm going to the moon, but you got to give me 2.
And it's like I always kind of felt this way in regards to Hall and Nash. I kind of like them both on their own. They bring out the worst in each other, I feel, when they're together. It seems like it magnifies their tendencies of selfishness and being too cool for school, I suppose.
That they were. Let's move on with the Warrior here. Apart from his formative years, the Warrior has always loved playing the role of the superhero, fighting for truth, justice, and the Warrior way. He scorned anything that went against his creed of decency and fair play. He knew he was a role model to millions, and he acted accordingly. He has received enormous press since the rumors of his imminent arrival in WCW began last winter. Curiosity was at a peak. What would he look like? With whom would he side? Would his philosophy remain the same, or would he deviate from that course of justice? He answered those questions in his first confrontation with Hollywood Hogan, making clear that his mission in WCW is one of goodness and decency. Not only does he intend to continue to be a role model, he says he is going to bring Hogan back from the dark side and return him to the superhero status that he enjoyed before his heinous turn in July of 1996. And I can't help but bring it back to the fact that the Warrior did do that to the Disciple, and we're right back to the Bootyman.
Oh man, right to the Bootyman. It all makes sense. I was just going to ask you 2 things. You were connected to the internet at that time. I was not. Was there a lot of rumors that he was coming into WCW? Was that a well-known fact that he was coming in? I remember on that night there are people with signs and stuff, so obviously some like smarts must have known. But was that a thing that people were speculating on or clamoring for?
I can remember people talking about it. Like specifically, I can't remember like anything concrete. Like it's all just a vague memory now.
Sure.
And back then it was just news sites, less than forums and boards. And so it was just people copying and pasting like Dave Meltzer's stuff over and over again and maybe adding something onto it themselves. And so if Meltzer knew it, it was going to filter down through all these different news sites.
Right.
And AOL chat rooms was like another big one.
The other thing that I've certainly seen every Warrior appearance in WCW. It's really not, even if you're like a huge Warrior fan, it's really not worth going out of your way to see. I don't remember I remember him showing up. I remember his screed that goes for 20 minutes and pisses off Eric Bischoff, etc. I don't remember his mission being trying to reclaim Hulk Hogan from the dark side. I mean, I could be misremembering that, but yeah, I don't really recall that as being part of his mission. And as you say, he does establish the one Warrior Nation, whatever that means, and he does absorb the Disciple into said nation. So I guess if he can't convert Hulk Hogan, he can convert his best friend.
Yeah, I don't remember that being a part of the story, but it kind of seems like reading this that they at least started in that direction. Like, okay, this is something Warrior does.
I don't think that people, well, that's probably not fair. when Hogan does become a good guy and don the red and yellow again, it does actually make a difference. The crowds are somewhat receptive, so perhaps they would have been receptive to Warrior somehow getting Hogan back from the dark side. But I doubt Hogan would have been receptive to that. Hogan the man, not Hogan the character. I doubt he would not have used Ultimate Warrior as the catalyst to turn face again. I doubt.
How wild would that have been, though, if let's just imagine they go that route and Warrior somehow like defeats Hogan and turns him back into the red and yellow. And now you have like Warrior and Hogan tag team versus like Hall and Nash.
That was always the direction. Well, maybe not specifically with Warrior, but that was always, I've never understood after Sting beats Hogan specifically, you could have had life in Hogan fighting the NWO or the NWO kicking him out or the NWO turning on him or him turning on the NWO, any one of those combinations. They could have gotten months and months and months and months out of that. And instead we got the finger poke of doom.
Yeah. There's
one of the many nights where I questioned, do I continue being a wrestling fan from this point forward?
Yeah, that's probably at least in the top 3 most damaging, stupid things they ever did.
It has to be.
Again, it plays back into the selfishness we were just talking about.
Absolutely.
Nash not wanting, like, I'll win the title, but I don't want to lose the title.
And Hogan is no saint in that scenario either. So yeah.
No, he was probably jumping for joy. He's like, yeah, it's a great idea. I'll just win the title by poking you. I'm like,
people really. They wanted to see Kevin Nash kill Hulk Hogan. I wanted to see Kevin Nash kill Hulk Hogan. The night that happened, the night of the finger poke of doom, my buddy came over, and I swear this is true. He goes, check out my jacket. I'm like, what? He had a leather jacket, and he had a NWO Wolfpack patch sewn onto the side of his jacket. And he was so proud. And I swear to you, that was the night of the finger poke of doom. A fool.
Yeah, I mean, we were all fools at that point.
Yes.
Okay. As Warrior made his debut, he said, "Speak to me, warriors." The masses of the audience were whipped into a frenzy. Chants of "Warrior, Warrior" rained down upon him. But is Warrior always going to get such a response from the WCW faithful? When fans speak to him in the future, will they continue to give their stamp of approval to his doctrine of no evil? Let's face it, wrestling fans in 1998 love an edge. 2 years ago, they were more receptive to a do-gooder. Today's fans love defiance. In 1996, fans love cooperation. In 98, fans want a wrestler that usurps authority. In 96, fans wanted the rules to be followed. The hero of 1996 has been replaced by 1998's anti-hero. As much as Hollywood Hogan is booed by the masses, fans would much rather revel in black and white Hogan than the red and yellow Hulkster. Been there, done that, they would say. Hogan did not just turn bad, he reinvented himself. And it was not out of bitterness necessarily. It was out of necessity, a necessity to change as the wrestling world was changing. Pragmatism and a nose for the business potential, e.g. the NWO, transformed heroic Hulk into heartless Hollywood. And there probably wasn't much more mileage left in the red and yellow unless, he was already, I think, getting booed at that point. I didn't come back to WCW until the NWO formed. And so I kind of missed out on the Dungeon of Doom era Hogan stuff and whatnot. But do you remember that?
That was about where I came in a little bit before the NWO. And yeah, so I remember definitely seeing Hulk Hogan. But he was doing the dark side gimmick at that time where I don't know if that was really meant to be a trial balloon for him turning heel or whatever. But at any rate, he starts dressing in all black. He doesn't really have heel mannerisms per se, but he starts acting like he has an edge, much like this fairly prescient writer was talking about. But of course, that storyline goes nowhere. He just defeats the Dungeon of Doom. I think Macho Man probably helps him. He probably fails to put Macho Man over, much like usual, as business as usual for Hogan. One of my biggest problems with Hogan, he clearly revels in being Hollywood Hulk Hogan. He thinks it's a really good character. He wrestles no differently as Hollywood Hulk Hogan. He really his promos aren't really largely different. I suppose they're a little more strange than well, Mr. Bischoff, and the weird stuff like that. But other than that, he's still largely cocaine fueled. Oh, I guess I shouldn't say that. Largely nonsensical. Just kind of heel Hulk Hogan and face Hulk Hogan aren't really a mile different from each other. So while he was definitely running out of steam as a good guy, and switching to a bad guy was definitely the correct direction to go, I would dispute that it's even a different character. But this writer is definitely onto something in that the 1996 conception of the Ultimate Warrior, I don't really recall if it really was a hit with WWF fans at that time, but I don't think it would have lasted much longer than however long it lasted. Obviously, he falls out with WWF over various things. But even so, he would not have made it into the Attitude Era, I don't think, or at least the WWF side of the Attitude Era. I mean, maybe he could have adapted. I could be wrong about that, but his character is so cartoonish, so comic booky, so over the top. I don't think it would have worked, and you can certainly argue in WCW it did not work.
I can't really imagine the Ultimate Warrior in the Attitude Era because he wouldn't have wanted to do anything that made him look stupid, which was like what they did with 90% of those guys. And going back to Hogan, like he did always wrestle as a heel.
Yep.
And one of my favorite spots, I don't know what match it is, but he's wrestling Ric Flair. And he just gouges Ric Flair's eyes. And Ric Flair's like, no, let me take it. And he gouges Hogan's. So he no-sells it. He gouges Hogan's eyes. And he's like, no way. He no-sells it. And he gouges Flair's eyes. So there's 3 eye gouges in like 3 seconds where no one wants to sell it.
I can just picture. Oh yeah, I'm there. I can just picture that so easily. His dynamic with Flair is just. It's so unusual. Like, he clearly trusts Flair, obviously, but no one wants to boo Flair, even if Flair is at his most dastardly. And just every time they had a match, the psychology is all wrong. The outcomes are often wrong. And, it's not really Flair's fault. I mean, Hogan's got to be one of the most selfish performers I've ever seen. And I've always wondered, it's like he didn't need to be. He was the best. He was the biggest draw. You see him like on a normal television show, talking to Oprah. We just saw recently, someone posted on YouTube, him showing up on the Jerry Lewis telethon. He just shows up. Jerry Lewis is entranced by Hulk Hogan. He's just like staring at his muscle. Because obviously, Hulk Hogan compared to normal people looks like some kind of, comic book character come to life. So like he's literally hanging on his muscles. Hulk Hogan just says something, quick about, cerebral palsy and, asking the big dude upstairs for help and so forth. But the whole crowd, who probably does not care in the least about wrestling, is rocking and rolling with Hogan the second he is on the stage. So he had such magnificent charisma, but he never used it to put over people. He always used it to protect himself. And I've just never understood. I've never understood why he wasn't more generous. Ric Flair was too generous, and Hulk Hogan wasn't generous enough.
Yeah, it's kind of odd. Like, in a way, his theory of just being selfish, it worked for him because it did. He managed to weasel into these contracts where he had creative control.
Sure.
And if it doesn't work for him, he's just not going to do it. And at the end, he had a run on top of, over a decade. Nash is the same way. It's like, if it doesn't work for him, he's not going to do it. And he was always at the top. He protected his spot to the detriment of the company. But it's almost like, well, they didn't even care about that. So what they're doing is working. Like, it's getting them to the end that they want, that Hogan gets the belt. And just like we were talking about, like, Nash never looks stupid. Like, that's what we want. And we want to be at the top.
There's specifically I believe it's an AOL interview with Eric Bischoff, where someone says, is it a good idea giving a guy like Hogan creative control? And he's like, we want him to have creative control. He helps us. And it's just like, oh, it's such backward thinking. We want him to have creative control. Well, do you? And, I'm sure he regretted saying that later. Maybe he didn't. It's Eric Bischoff. I can't speak for him.
I imagine he's done enough mental gymnastics to convince himself that even to this day it was the right decision.
Absolutely.
But let's finish up this Warrior article here. Whether fans, friends, and foes of Hogan like it or not, most of what goes on in WCW still revolves around his 6'8" frame. Wait, they list Hogan at 6'8"?
Kayfabe.
Okay. The Warrior knows that by starting with, and he hopes, saving Hogan, he can not only turn the tide of WCW's war with the NWO, but also steer the course of wrestling's future. The fans may not like it after a while, but Warrior likely feels that he knows a little bit better. Like a parent with an ill child, Warrior could dish out some medicine that doesn't taste good, but is beneficial to the health of his quote-unquote children and the sport. But unlike that sick child, the wrestling fans can't be forced into taking any medicine. The sports fan base is growing daily and is now larger than when Warrior was at his peak with as the WWF World Champion. If he listens to the fans who are speaking to him, he won't necessarily like what he hears. Eventually, there may be some choice words and one-finger salutes aimed his way. The Warrior has never been one to run with the tide. He has always set his own course. That has been his trademark and will certainly continue as such. But if Warrior views himself as a leader, he has to respect the wishes of his followers. No evil may not be an option to gain fan approval. The fans understand that wrestlers must do whatever they can to get ahead. Perhaps what Warrior has failed to realize is that many of the crimes committed in wrestling, even by Hogan, are, in the eyes of the fans, necessary evils.
Again, I feel like the writer is fairly prescient. He can't come out because obviously they have a piece about the Warrior, so he can't say anything too terribly negative. But if you take that article to its logical end, he's saying that Warrior is antiquated and out of place and out of time. And, you can't that I would agree with that assessment. He was indeed out of time and out of place when he came back to WCW. So I still don't. The picture they paint of him as crusading to fix wrestling and save Hulk Hogan and save the WCW. Okay, whatever. I don't really quite understand that part, but he was definitely a man out of place in WCW and certainly out of the place in the late 90s.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, I don't know how much more time would have had to pass, but, eventually the corny stuff, it isn't corny anymore if enough time has passed and it's fresh again, just like we were talking about everything circular. It all comes back around eventually.
Sure.
And 2 years was definitely not enough.
No.
And I remember kind of being psyched up for the Warrior a little bit. And then it was just like, okay, this is all it is. The author of this article nailed it. It just felt stale.
Warrior completely. My nascent fandom, I think I was done probably by WrestleMania 3-ish, thereabouts. I think we would occasionally watch a Saturday night here and there. Like we would record Saturday Night Live and get main event instead by accident. But yeah, I completely missed out on Ultimate Warrior the first time around. So when he showed up in 1998, I had an idea of who he was, but I didn't really. And I certainly got back and watched WrestleMania 6 and so forth. But when he came to WCW, I don't really remember feeling like very excited. I remember chuckling at one thing, and it's when he said that he knew Hogan's barber and then stared pregnantly at Brutus. I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of funny. I get that. I get that reference, and that was about all I cared about Ultimate Warrior. And then he's only there for, oh gosh, it's a little less than a year, but I think really more like 6 months-ish. And he just made such no impression on me whatsoever. I really did not care about the trials and tribulations of the Warrior.
All right. So I think that wraps it up. Let's jump to our memories of the 1990s.
Excellent.
Is there a year you want to go, or do you want to just jump back?
I believe you left off with 1990. Yeah. So let's just go through their systematic and we can comment on what their thoughts were.
Sure thing. All right. Memories of 1991, Stu Sachs, associate publisher. I hate to be negative around this time of the year, but when thinking back on 1991, foremost in my mind are body bags and coffins and Iraqi flags and electric chairs. The sport of wrestling took its lumps in 91 for sure, But then there was May 19, a day that will live forever in my mind, in the minds of every fan fortunate enough to have seen the superb battle pitting Lex Luger and Sting against Rick and Scott Steiner at Super Bowl 91 in St. Petersburg, Florida. For one day, promoters broke the unwritten rule that forbids matches between fan favorites. For this match, nobody needed a rooting interest. It was enough to root for the very best action that four of the very best action wrestlers alive could provide. In a year of shameful memories, this match of the year, made me proud to be a wrestling journalist.
Wow.
Suppose was supposed to be made me proud, but yeah, I don't think I've ever seen that match.
I have. That is a tremendous match. I don't recall if it was match of the year necessarily, but that's very interesting that he mentions all the cartoon, the coffins. And when you said electric chair, I had to rack my brain for a second. And of course, I realized what he was referring to. I was like, what, electric chair? But it's interesting that he mentioned all.
To do with the Butcher?
It is indeed. And Cactus Jack pulls the switch on him on the quote Terminator, and then nothing happens. And then some special effects happen later on. So it's interesting that Stu mentioned all the cartoon stuff and then just talked about a good old-fashioned solid wrestling match. And yes, as I recall, that is I think it's a fairly short match. I think it's only like 10 or 11 minutes long. But yeah, no, that is a tremendous match. And that's an era of WCW. There's problems during that era, but Flair's still there at that point. And, there are issues. You can see trouble on the horizon, but the wrestling product itself at that point, that kind of late 1990, early 91, is still actually really solid, and they have a lot of really solid wrestlers. So yeah, no, that's very interesting that he said that.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to, okay, so I will occasionally do like watch-alongs for AEW or something where it's on a YouTube channel and people watch along.
Sure.
And if you read the comments on YouTube videos and Twitter, sometimes you don't know who these people are, but they are always suggesting what they think should happen. And every one of these comments that I see, like, I can't say every one, but they're usually all just swerves. Like, so-and-so should turn heel. They could turn on them. Everything is just about like turning and what's this crazy angle going to be. And Stu Sachs here kind of boils it down to, at the very end, like, sometimes all you need is a good wrestling match. And like, we need to get away from everything has to be a crazy gimmick and a turn and a swerve all at once. You know what I mean?
I love wacky vignettes. I love skits. I love, insane Flair promos where he's, stripping down to his boxers and strutting all over the ring. I love all that stuff. But at the end of the day, I like wrestling for wrestling, and I like good wrestling matches. I know that's not everyone's focus, but in my wrestling fandom, that is my focus. So yeah, I'm 100% on board with Stu Sachs. And I was just so surprised that he said that, because that era of wrestling, even in WCW to a smaller degree, is just all about the characters and the stories, and not so much on the ring focused stuff. So I'm glad that he said that.
Let's go to Bill Apter, senior editor. Memorable and enduring, there's only one thing 1991 really had powerful enough for me to put in those categories. The very unusual sight of Ric Flair in the WWF. I never thought Flair would leave WCW. More so, I never thought I would see the day Hulk Hogan would accept his challenge. That's crazy. We were just talking about this. Shocking also in this scenario is the fact that the WWF left Flair's entire persona alone. He didn't have to be an Undertaker or a Matador. He was just Ric Flair, and they even went so far as to let him wear the belt he won in WCW, and even recognized his claim of being the real World Heavyweight Champion. The Flair-Hogan confrontations I saw during the latter part of 1991 were as thrilling as all the pre-match hype indicated they would be.
My wife and I often go back and forth in regards to Flair in the WWF. It is amazing that they just let him be Ric Flair, and he's not, Spartacus or something. He's not some kind of wacky character. His performance at Royal Rumble 92 obviously is immaculate, and that's surely the greatest Royal Rumble. I definitely have changed my mind on this more than once over the years. I don't know that he's a great fit in WWF. He's a cartoon character too. I mean, he's Ric Flair. He's larger than life. He's limousine riding, etc. But I mean, he's also there with a guy who's a tax man. He's there with an undead zombie man. I mean, it's just I don't know. I've never really. It just seems out of place for him. I don't know. I don't know if I really care for his run in WWF. It just seems out of place to me.
Yeah, that Royal Rumble, that's one of the tapes I rented over and over.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Well, when you were a child, did you understand the gravity of Ric Flair showing up on WWF television?
No, not at all. So I was 7 in 1992, and I didn't get that. I just got that he was a big deal. I didn't know why he was a big deal, other than he's a world champion. He's got this belt, and he's like hanging out with Mr. Perfect and cutting these awesome promos. But I didn't understand why. But I knew the way that he was presented, he was a big deal.
The primetime wrestling. I guess it's the episode before he's actually in the Fed, or it's maybe a couple of weeks before he's in the Fed, where Bobby Heenan is. The show just starts with him in the back, yelling at random production staff to straighten up, to get dressed better. Ric Flair is coming. He's running around with the world title. He's got the NWA title in his hands. It's just one of the most tremendous introductions. So you can't fault WWF for not trying hard. I suspect that Ric Flair is just probably not Vince's style of wrestler, probably, but he could not turn down getting the top man from the competition. So we got what we got. But you can't say that they didn't try to really push him really hard. I kind of like the blurring out of the belt. I think it's like, ooh, it's taboo. he's got what's that on his shoulder? Oh, it's the NWA title, but he's not supposed to have that. I kind of like that stuff. So yeah, there's a lot of good stuff he does in the WWF. I just I'm such an NWA WCW homer that it doesn't ring true to me. But that's not really anyone's fault necessarily.
All right, let's move on to Memories of 92. Stu Sachs says, at the year's start, there was Paul E. Dangerously, the world at his feet, and the Dangerous Alliance, the blissful band of thugs in virtual control of WCW. If there was a decision to be made, Paul E. made it quickly and correctly. If there was someone blocking the path of Alliance dominance, he was dealt with appropriately. But soon, as always seems to be the case when bad people try to pull their talents for a common good, it all began to unravel until finally, and this may be the most memorable moment, Paul E. completely lost his cool on camera at Halloween Havoc and screamed just enough at Medusa to incite his former confidant to do her Rockettes impression on his head. Congratulations on your Manager of the Year award, Paul.
What a tremendous angle! How fantastic! I mean, of course, I've loved every incarnation of the Four Horsemen, but the Dangerous Alliance is perhaps my favorite stable ever in wrestling. Even though Paul E. says specifically they're not a stable, they're still a stable, and it's just tremendous talents. They're all teaching Steve Austin. He's learning at the feet of Rick Rude. He's learning from Arn Anderson. He's learning from Bobby Eaton. Just an amazing team. The angle where, Paulie flips his lid at Medusa and screams, "You're a woman, and I'm a man," and she finally just gets fed up and just kicks him with probably for real kicks him with just great force. Medusa was such a great performer. You can't say enough about Paulie as a manager. The Dangerous Alliance was so well done. Medusa's defection, the slow split up of the alliance, just fantastic stuff. And again, a very good choice. I'm surprised how good these choices have been so far.
I'm trying to think of a modern comparison of the Dangerous Alliance, and I'm having a hard time.
There's nothing like it, because you had the young up and comer in Steve Austin. You had Rick Rude, who's like kind of the figurehead of it. And Rick Rude had just come from WWF. He'd never been pushed to the top there. At WCW, he was free to be the top guy, the top heel, certainly. I guess depending on the time frame, the top heel. You had guys like Bobby Eaton and you had Arn Anderson, who were both fan favorites in the sense that people really liked them, but they're also both just low down, scoundrels. So everyone loved to hate them, and they're just such an entertaining, just workhorses, but they're entertaining at the same time. Just a real mixture of personalities there. Basically existing to make sure Rick Rude kept his title and to make sure that Paul Lee, I guess, had bragging rights and so forth. I don't think there's really going to be a modern equivalent. The closest thing to Paul Lee himself, I guess, would be Don Callis, although Callis is a bit more zany than Paul Lee probably was. But, and I mean that as a high compliment. I mean, Callis is amazing. Yeah. But as far as the Dangerous Alliance itself goes, I can't think of anything quite like that. The Elite isn't anything like that, for instance.
Yeah, and not to get off on a tangent, but man, I remember the first time I saw Callis, and I think it was when he was playing the Jackal character.
Oh, sure.
and even like stuck with like Kurgan and the Interrogator, it was like there's something about this guy, like he's pretty good. And then he was Cyrus the Virus in ECW, and it was like any role that he's in, like he's doing it really well.
He excels.
He's oftentimes not given much.
Sure. Particularly as the Jackal. I mean, geez. My wife, Mrs. Convoy, has an unironic love for the Truth Commission. I couldn't tell you why. She really digs the Truth Commission, so I have no idea. I cannot account for her taste in that regard. But Don Callis, particularly, he's really good as Cyrus the Virus. He's good in his really brief stint in TNA. Is kind of very similar character. He's there from TNA management, so you might as well say the network. Yeah. And he's very good in that. And then today, he's shattered past any kind of heights he had before, particularly as Cyrus. And I'm in awe of him every time he comes out today. I mean, even if he kind of like rehashes his shtick sometimes, the delivery is just so top notch. I mean, he's the closest thing we have to a Bobby Heenan, and again, I mean that as the highest compliment. He's so quick-witted. He's just a fantastic person. But Paul Lee as a performer was fantastic in his own right, and he reinvented himself a number of times as well. So I think those two track. He's still at it, absolutely. I think those two track pretty well, actually.
Last thing I'll say about Callis, you mentioned Bobby Heenan. He himself has specifically said he's ripping off Bobby Heenan.
Sure.
So I think he'd be very happy with that.
I'm sure he'd be pleased as punch at that compliment. And then he would say something disparaging along the lines of, "You don't know anything, kid." Something along those lines, I'm sure.
Well, the best heels tell the truth,
That's true.
1992, Bill Apter. The year will be remembered in my mind as the year the wrestling world had to learn to live without Hulk Hogan. After WrestleMania 8, the Hulkster quit, opting for a movie career. Oh no, there'll be no Hulk Hogan at SummerSlam. How will the public react? Well, more than 80,000 fans jammed London's Wembley Stadium to witness Davey Boy Smith, the Ultimate Warrior, Randy Savage, and Bret Hart filling the Hulk's void. Wrestling proved that it will remain alive and well without Hogan. No, there will never be another Hulk Hogan, but there will never be another Bart Starr or Joe DiMaggio either. We don't forget about the old, but we put them in their proper place at the proper time and look to the new.
Pulling out SummerSlam to say that, they don't need a Hulk Hogan. Well, that's cherry picking, huh? SummerSlams are, I think, up until, the modern WrestleManias, that's their actual, real biggest draw. No weird fake entertainment numbers. Wembley, SummerSlam is their legit biggest draw ever. So that's an interesting cherry pick. But the problem with Hogan, we've already talked about it, is, he outlasted his welcome everywhere he went. So he never changed. So, that's interesting that he would say that.
And when you go to, you run a show like SummerSlam in a place where you don't usually run shows like that, and you put the hometown guy in it, it's going to do well.
I was working on a project for the Observer site, which, may or may not see the light of day at some point. And essentially, I was tasked with reading pretty much every observer and kind of summarizing it really quickly for kind of like a search type database. And so I'm reading these observers, and obviously 1992 is when stuff's really falling apart for WWF. With the steroid trials, with the Ring Boy scandals, I'm sure our listeners know about these things. If not, watch Dark Side of the Ring coming soon, I'm sure. WWF is literally falling apart at the seams at this point. There was actual thought of them becoming a touring brand in Europe only because they were still so hot in Europe, and SummerSlam was so well received. There was actual thought that they would just retreat and tour in Europe for a while. Obviously, that didn't quite come to pass. They would just do those yearly European tours, but there was actual consideration given to this around that time. So that's a hell of a thought, that if they would have retreated and just became a touring brand in Europe.
I've never heard that. That's very interesting.
Wild.
All right. So I think that's probably a good place to leave off for here. Maybe next time, let's just finish up memories of 93 through 98, and we can probably squeeze that and get another episode out of it. And then we'll move on to a new magazine.
That sounds like an excellent plan.
All right.
Yeah, okay. I was really impressed with a couple of their picks this time. This seemed a lot better than the first couple of picks they had. I'm still laughing about the honor of Hulk Hogan. But these ones actually seem like something wrestling fans might actually say. So that's quite interesting.
Yeah, and I'm guessing, these were picked out of, like 91. So in 92, it wasn't like them looking back from 98 at 91 and
right.
Memory. And so, yeah, it's like when 91 rolls around and you're talking about the honor of Hulk Hogan, at the time, it's kind of like, yeah. And then you go a few years and it's like, ooh, that did not age well. All right, so that's going to do it for this episode of Brute McVein's Wrestling Review with DJ Convoy. Thank you for listening. We ask maybe share the link with someone if you're enjoying it. There's a lot of wrestling podcasts out there, and we thank you for spending your time listening to this one. DJ, anything to add before we close it out?
Just thanks for all the positive feedback we've received so far, and hopefully we make this an entertaining and light listen for you guys. I don't think this is something where, we're going to go, 2 hours droning on about something. I think it's like a nice, fun, light thing to listen to, and I think we can use more stuff like that. So hopefully everyone's digging it, and hopefully we can keep bringing these out for you guys.
All right. So for DJ Convoy, I'm Brute McVein. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.